For most of their history, humans have concerned themselves with customs and stories. Their customs imposed order and fostered group ties. Their stories imparted truths. A lot of the stories explained the origin of the world and of life, and explained the phenomena of the surrounding environment. Of course, the stories were assumed to hold value as accurate explanations, but they were much more than that. These stories didn't merely recall events, they held many layers of meaning, they conveyed morals. Their telling imparted a shared sense of identity and a deep emotional resonance that connected members to each other and the world around them. Thus, these shared truths have long been an important part of human life. As technology improved, humans became ever more capable of exploring the world around them. Eventually, a formal way to rigorously observe, predict, and explain phenomena was implemented, the scientific method. The scientific revolution impacted human thought in several important ways. First, it forced us to acknowledge that humans are not blessed with all of the knowledge of the world, that many phenomena are simply beyond the natural limits of our perception, for example, microscopic organisms, and that assumed explanations of the world can be completely wrong, for example, the Earth being flat rather than spherical. At best, this acknowledgement has brought humility and wonder. At worst, it has crushed our sense of worth. Second, it encouraged the seeking of truths that are general to all human beings rather than those that are culture-specific. As cultures first began to grow aware of one another, it became increasingly evident that truths differed greatly across societies and tribes. Surely, all of them could not be true. The battling among cultures for the authority of their truths has indeed been fierce. The formal organization of scientific research was eventually implemented to yield an understanding of the world that, unlike those of the stories, can be the same for humans of all cultures and eras, reliable and consistent models of reality. Experiments were meticulously designed and executed, and findings were formally analyzed and interpreted by well-trained peers, all in the hope of yielding knowledge or truth that is not riddled with error, or limited by subjective or cultural bias. Thus, the simple role of stories to impart truth had been radically changed by modernity. Some people today claim that science has completely supplanted stories as the source of truth, but this assertion is not accurate. In fact, the rise of science served to split truth in two. Before our formal, systematic investigations of the world began in earnest, truth was a singular comprehensive entity, and it was conveyed and shared in the stories of cultures. Eventually, though, science became a source for consistent explanations of the world and reliable predictions of various phenomena, or informational truth. Some cultures may have boasted of the accuracy or predictive power of their stories, but their real value is for truth that has little to its factual accuracy. This is mythic truth. It dwells in those multiple layers of meaning, the conveyed morals, the shared sense of identity, and the deep emotional connections to others and to the world. The need for this type of truth never went away, and was never supplanted by science. In the beginning, there was no distinction. Stories were simply a source of truth. Science eventually fostered a concern for informational truth, thereby diminishing the role of stories to provide this, but the power of cultural narratives to convey mythic truth has never waned. 2. Major problems arise from the splintering of human truth into the informational and the mythic. Specifically, the problems arise from a failure to acknowledge the split, thereby enabling a competition of the two truths for one title of absolute truth. Thus, each of the problems is related to the respective truth that certain humans hold as their standard for human living. The first problem stems from opposition to any enterprise for human general factual truth. Proponents of science point out that their predictions and models are available for all humans to use and understand, but there remains a large population of humans that nonetheless view science as just another culture to rival their own. So, instead of viewing science as an authority for informational truth, and hence acknowledging the split of truth, opponents feel that this rival group is relentlessly spreading their outsider truth like a nasty virus. After all, the newcomer to the competition was science, and what business did skeptical thinkers have telling others what was factual or correct? Although there have been great impediments to its progress, the flow of history has ultimately moved in the direction of science as a source of stable, reliable, human general truth. Still, even today, in societies that are highly dependent upon knowledge and technology afforded by scientific research, there are many people who nonetheless assert the factual superiority of their stories over scientific consensus. Why are such people resistant to an effort for human general informational truth? Why does science feel like an alien outsider to these people? One reason is that, to them, its truth lacks the resonant power and meaning that their own cultural truths hold. Thus, even though it can sometimes yield convenient technology, its lack of mythic truth renders the culture of science uncomfortably cold and clinical to those outside of the tribe. Moreover, the power of their own mythic truth is so great that they interpret science as a general threat to the authority of their stories. However, this is not the case for everyone who finds stories important. Those who openly acknowledge the split of truth into two can embrace science as an authority for factual truth, and still receive important mythic truths from their stories. It is the failure to recognize this split that closes a spiritually inclined mind to the power of science for factual truth. The greatest danger posed by this stance is an erosion of consistent, reliable knowledge in human society, in favor of the knowledge imposed by a dominant culture, which is prone to bias and error. On the other end, individuals concerned primarily with informational truth fail to recognize the importance of mythic truth in human life. Many such people insult the stories of various cultures as being childish and primitive. This condescending dismissal perpetuates two problems. First, it nourishes the enmity between the informational camp and the mythic camp, even among mythic individuals who have no problem with science. This does nothing to help the expansion of understanding. It only creates more resistance and more enemies. Secondly, the individuals who care only for informational truth are ignoring their own need for mythic truth. People in this camp are often not unified by stories, and risk minimizing or blocking out some crucial aspects of human experience. It's likely that fervent nationalism and other rigid ideologies, even when secular, provide important mythic truth to an otherwise lost and downtrodden people. Perhaps if the distinction between the two truths were openly acknowledged, then even secular people could bond with shared mythic truths and still respect science and skepticism to promote informational truth. It is a great thing that humans were able to formalize exploration and understanding of the world to something that is reliable and general to all humans. Science is the best way for humans to understand the details of the universe, to enable technology that can improve our way of living, and to make predictions of the future that can inform us of what actions we can presently take. It is, therefore, the best source of informational truth. Humanity as a whole would benefit greatly from a unanimous embrace of and respect for skepticism and scientific thought. However, humanity would also benefit greatly from a full acknowledgement and embrace of mythic truth, and the power of stories in human cultures. The avoidance of mythic truth by die-hard secularists not only denies a vital aspect of their own experience, it also limits the empathy that they can have for fellow humans who are steeped in stories and mythic truths. Additionally, to the mythic camp, factoid fanatics who refuse to engage in the emotionally rich magic of metaphorical language can sometimes seem like they are trying to emulate robots, intelligent and logical, but missing an important aspect of their humanity. Even among spiritual individuals driven by the power of their own cultures, mythic truth, an explicit distinction of this truth from informational truth would promote the appreciation of differences across cultures, rather than adherence to tribal absolutism. It's time that we acknowledge the distinction of these two important truths. We must respect the authority of science for factual human general truth, and the necessity of stories as a source of mythic truth shared by various individuals in a culture. Failure to acknowledge these domains as distinct and independent is an injustice to the full experience and well-being of humans. Thank you.